Close the doors of your mind. Close the gates of your mind. Close the gates of your palace, your bais, your ahal, your ohel, your tent, your mishkan, your mikdash. And bring your mind to the center. Bring your body to the center. Within your 12 cranial nerves, within your 12 melanin centers. Within your yod and your kaf, within your mental faculties of yourself, within your frontal lobe, within your personality. And bring your mind to the center. Bring your body to the center. For today is a day of freedom. Today is a day of warning. Today is a day that Yahuwah has given to us as another shabath, that we may cease from our labors and our own selfish self, and we may put aside our own ambitions and our own goals in this life. We may fuse our mind and our heart and our mind to the plans of Yahuwah. For we make plans according to the Ruach and not according to one's own self in this carnal nature. So today we acknowledge the one who made all the heart of the earth, all the nahar of the earth, all the rivers and streams of the earth, all the mountains of the earth, where the water flows down, and Yahuwah allows us to understand him in a full capacity of who he is. Yahuwah Elohim. So as we move forward in his kindness, we move forward in his truth, we move forward in his way. For a highway shall be there in the way, and it shall be called the way of Kudash. The unclean shall not pass over. It shall be for those men and women, and you will not err in it. Right? So this is the Aleph Kaf, or 2 Peter. 2 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 20. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 20. And it says, for what credit is it if you, when you sin, you are beaten for it? What credit is it? You know how you get credits? You go to college, you do college courses and you get credits. Right? Depending on how many courses you take to get your degree, or your master's degree or bachelor's degree, or you go to the next level, you go get your doctorate. You got to get credits. And those credits are given to you based upon what? Your performance and what you do. Right? It said, what credit is it if when you sin, you are beaten for it? You endure. You endure what? The fact that you failed. The very same thing when you fail a course, when you take a class, you fail it. The very same you failed your test. So therefore, you have to endure your failures. You have to endure the F. You say the F. Or you got to endure the Lamed staff. Right? But guess what it says? But if when you do good and you suffer for it, you endure it, this is a gracious thing in the sight of Elohim, right? Because when you do good, ain't no guarantee that you're gonna be prospering. It ain't gonna be no guarantee that you're gonna be some wealthy individual. It's not, but you're gonna celebrate the win that you had, the good that you've done. Why? Because that's something that you accomplished, especially when you have a lot of F's and you failed in many of your tests. Then guess what? You gotta get the grades up. You know how they say, get your grades up. Verse 21, for to this you have been called. So whether you do good or evil, you got to endure. To this you have been called, because Mashiach also suffered for you. What did he do? Leaving you an example. So, leaving an example. So that you might follow his steps. So you got to follow his steps. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. So he didn't commit no sin. When he did Pesach, he committed no sin. When he did Qahalath, he committed no sin. When he did Bakor, he committed no sin. When he counted 50 days, 49 days to the 50th day, he committed no sin. When he had 3 months off and he was going to the first day of the 7th month, he committed no sin. When he went to when he did Bakar, or he went to Kafar, Day of Atonement, he committed no sin. When he went to Katsukah, committed no sin. And when he had another 4 months off, guess what? He committed no sin. Then he went right back again and he did it again. He did nothing. He didn't have no sin. Neither was deceit found in his mouth. So his mouth, his tongue, had no deception inside of it. No lies. There was no deceit in it. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. So when he was reviled, he didn't revile in return. You have the right to remain silent, and that's what he did. He chose that right. And guess what? When he suffered, he did not threaten. He didn't threaten. Why? Because you suffering for good or you suffering for evil. It all depends. And guess what? He did not threaten, but continue entrusting himself to him who judges justly. What do you mean? That means his justice, his mishpat. He trusted in the one and true judge, because he knew, okay, they reviled me, they persecuted me, but I'm gonna keep trusting that person who's going to judge them properly. Right? But he said he left us his steps. Why? Because if we don't follow his steps, then guess what happens? This is Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 1. Actually, Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1. It says, therefore be imitators of Elohim as beloved children. So you got to imitate your father as beloved children and walk in ahava, love. As Mashiach loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to Elohim. But, verse 3, but sexual immorality and impurity, all impurity and or covetousness must not be named among you. That means never. You know, never. We talked about never. Must not be named among you. Never. As proper among Kodashim. Why? Because it's not proper. Let there be no filthiness, no foolish talk, nor evil joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. So how about some praise? How about some righteous talk? For you may be sure that everyone who is sexual, moral, or impure, or who is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Mashiach and Elohim. So what's the whole point of this? Skipping over to verse 14. Ephesians 5:14. For anything that becomes visible is light. So if you can see this, is light. Therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Mashiach will shine on you. Why? Because if you keep sleeping, because the shamash is like a bridegroom leaving his chamber. But if you still sleep and you ain't get up yet, the sun ain't gonna never shine on you. You're gonna be still stationary. You're gonna be still stationary, and you ain't never felt the sun on you yet. Look carefully then how you walk, right? So if you're doing that, you need to look real careful at what you're doing. He said, what am I doing on a day-to-day basis that's caused me to do that and to have this type of mindset that doesn't allow me to push myself to even lift my leg up out of the bed? Look carefully how you walk. He said, because you ain't even walked yet. And not as unwise, but as wise. Making best use of time, because the days are what? Are evil. So your days are evil. The days are evil. You can look at the world today. It's raw. Right? Guess what? Therefore, do not be foolish, because if you're sitting around not doing anything, not seeking his debar, not seeking things above, not seeking Yahuwah Elohim, if you're not doing this, then you're foolish. You see the days what they are now. But understand what the will of Yahuwah is, because everything is Yahuwah, the will of Yahuwah, right? Right, so going to verse 22. 5:22. It says, wives, submit yourselves, submit to your own husbands. So your own husbands, not somebody else's. As to Yahuwah. So the same way you submit to Yahuwah is the very same way you submit to your husband. But guess what? For the husband is the head of he's the Rosh of the wife, even as Mashiach is the head of the body, of his body, and is himself its Savior. It's his Savior. Why? Not now as the body is subject to Mashiach, also wives submit in everything to their husbands. Why? Because the husband is the head. So if the body parts ain't moving with the head, then guess what? You have crook back, you have muscle imbalances, you have a hunchback, right? You got joint pain, knee pain. You got so many things going on in the body. And these things are not moving properly. So if you get in proprioceptive enriched environments, which are unstable, when you get to those situations, then guess what's going to happen to your body? Your body's going to be doing things erratic, and you're going to get even more injuries. Right? If you can't move in frontal and sagittal plane, if you can't move laterally, and if you can't move forward, if you can't move front and back, you're not going to be able to move properly. Your whole body's going to be off, especially when you get in tough situations where you're going to have to do things that are outside your ability. And you have to listen to the mind in order for your body to move in that direction, which is the Rosh, which is the head of the household. Verse 25, husbands, love your wives. So after you do all that, he said, love your wives. Why? As Mashiach loved the congregation and gave himself up for her. What do you mean gave himself up? Why? Because when people come to take you down, what do? He said, y'all go that way, I go this way. Why? I give up. Right? Lift my hands up. Where's the rest of them? I don't know. Why? I give myself over to them. Why? Because what's the point of being a head if you're not willing to put yourself in the middle on the line for everybody else? What's the point? There's no point in doing it. Because if you're going to be a good manager, you're going to have to give yourself up. You're going to have to be the one to put yourself in between danger and them. You're going to have to. As Mashiach loved the congregation and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the Adar. So how in the world you going to be a manager and you don't know the Adar? You don't know Daleth Rosh. You don't even know you got to meditate Haggah and human night. Meditate human night. You have good success. If you don't know the Adar, how are you going to be able to wash somebody clean? Especially when people get dirty. You know how your children come in and they have their feet dirty and their body dirty? You know, just like people, Ashar got to wash children when they get dirty. When they don't have the understanding on how to do it properly. How are you going to do that if you don't know the Adar? You don't even know the words to actually tell them to actually do it properly. You don't have the Adar to say that is wrong. This is proper. So that he might present the body or congregation to himself in splendor. Your Adar, your household in splendor. How are you going to do that? You got to use the bar, right? Without spot or wrinkle or any such thing. That's anything inside of your household, inside of your body, inside of your inward man, within your heart and your mind. That's within you. All that's within you, right? Because you know what's inside of your innermost parts. You got the man, you got Aharon's rod that budded, you got the 10 Commandments. You got a lot of things on the inside of you. But guess what? That she might be kudash and without blemish, right? Because you're going to be, you say that you may be kudash without blemish. So the only blemishes you have are the ones you don't submit to. Those are the blemishes you have. The blemishes you refuse to submit to. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies, just like your own body. Why? Because that's the whole point of it. He who loves his wife loves himself. Why? Because he's gonna give everything that he does for his body, he's gonna do the same thing for her. So if the person refuses to be loved, then guess what happens? Then she's not gonna feel loved as her own body. Loved just like he loves her, right? You know how it says, love her as you love yourself. And if you don't love her, you don't love you. But then when the person rejects your love, then guess what happens? They're going to have hatred towards you. They're going to hate you. They're going to hate you. Right? And guess what? For no one ever hated his own flesh, you probably, a man is not going to hate his Isha. But if she rejects your love, she's going to hate you. She's going to hate you. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Mashiach does the body, his congregation. So you think about that. But if you get rejected, understand they hate you. Because we are members of his body. Right? That's the whole point. We are members of his body. Right? So this is 2 Chronicles, Dabari Hayamim, 2 Chronicles 29, 15 through 17. 2 Chronicles 29, 15 through 17. It says, they gathered their brothers and consecrated themselves and went in as the king had commanded, by the words of Yahuwah. Right? So the words of Yahuwah said this, to cleanse the house of Yahuwah. So everything inside of the house has to be clean. Matter of fact, without spot or wrinkle or anything. And guess what? The priest went into the inner part of the house of Yahuwah to cleanse it. So he went into the innermost parts of the house to cleanse it. And they brought out all the uncleanness that they found in the temple of Yahuwah in the court of the house of Yahuwah. So it's just like the body is, the congregation is subject to Mashiach, so that the wives be subject to their husbands in everything. Why? Because when it comes to the cleaning process, everything has to be without spot or wrinkle. It can't have nothing, no defects, no nothing in it. And if you reject it, then it becomes a point where you will be found. Guess what? Everything in that man does will be hated. You will be hate the person. It just be that simple. And the Levites took it and carried it out to the brook Kidron. So they took all that stuff out of the house and took it to the brook Kidron. Guess what it says in verse 17? They began to consecrate on the first day of the first month. So he said, he's giving you the heads up. We ain't there yet. We're about 2 weeks away, right? You get a heads up. He says things need to be clean, and you can start now. They began to consecrate on the first day of the first month and on the 8th day of the month. So they still counting down. So we ain't even get to the 10th day where you take a lamb. Didn't even get there yet. And on the 8th day of the month, they came to the vestibule of Yahuwah. They came where? On the 8th day, they came to the vestibule of Yahuwah. Why? Because Yehudi equals to 8. Circumcision on the 8th day. Right? All these are all part of it. The bar equals to 8. Yahuwah equals to 8. All this is a part of it. And guess what? The vestibule of Yahuwah. Then for 8 days, they consecrated the house of Yahuwah, and on the 16th day of the first month, they finished. So that's all the way on the second day of Qahalath Lakam. They went all the way to the second day of Qahalath Lakam, of Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's how long they were cleaning. They were making sure everything was done, right? And this is all a part of what? Understanding, right? So that word for vestibule, it is ulam. Ulam. It says, and on the 8th day of the month, they came to the vestibule of Yahuwah, ulam. And guess what? That word means porch. So on the 8th day of the first month, they came to the vestibule. They came to the porch. You know how people have an entranceway into a place. They came there on the 8th day, ready to go into the porch. And guess what? And it says it also means time. It means vestibule. It means porch. It means bound to the building. Right? It's a connection to the building right at the entrance there of the doorway. You see it on some pillars. You see it like on other coliseums and places. They'll have like 2 pillars or 4 pillars on the side, and you go through a door. But all these are a part of the vestibule. And all this is a part of what? on the 8th day, the priests had to clean themselves out, and then till they got to that point, and then they had to do what? They had to do some things before they got to that point. So think about that. Think about getting to that place on the 8th day, and then you're finally getting in there, and then you're like, okay, now I'm in a place where I have to, they also call it a hall, right? Right, so that word, a vestibule is a small enclosed entrance or hall or anteroom, acting as a transition, right? So we're going through, just like we go to the first month, like the first month of the year, that's a transition time. Like you're going from the last year, crossing over to another year. And you don't want to start your year doing things opposite what you did last year, right? So pay very careful attention to your walk. What did I do last year that I don't want to do this year, next year, right? That's what you got to pay attention to. If you're in your higher thoughts, most people ain't in their higher nature. When you're in your higher nature, you start to realize, okay, this pattern that I've been doing for how many years or whatever it may be, a decade, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, right? That's all that's a part of it. You say, why Yahuwah be allowing these things to happen and to rise back up? Because he want to show you ain't clean as you thought you would. You had some things dormant. It was dormant for like maybe 20 years, 25 years. I just wanted you to see that it was still there. Back in the back of the couch, in the corner, in the nook and cranny inside the couch where you sit, in the corner of the couch, where you had ate that stuff that one time, and it was in the corner of it, and you never really got that dust mop and got that stuff out of there. Because it's been in there for like maybe 5 years, 20 years. Or it's been buried underground under a tree that you had it buried. But for some reason, it was a mudslide, and then it uncovered itself, and it was on top of the soil, and it grew with one of your plants. It was supposed to be in love, but you ended up loving something else. You ended up loving a whore. You ended up loving a past lover, right? You end up creating something inside of your heart and your mind it just came up out of the soil, though. That's what happens. You get a nice little event that happened in your life, and that's where everything get revealed, and then you gotta clean yourself out, right? So you got the 8th day. It means an airlock buffer, zone between a building and exterior and interior, right? So airlock. You have the airlocks when they come from depressurized, when they come up out of the submarine, and they go through a thing and they have to depressurize themselves or airlock to get all the water out, right? That's what fasting does. It gets all the water out your body. And what did they do from the 1st to the 8th day? They were trying to get all the stuff out, all the impurities out. Assumed, right? But it says it improves energy efficiency by trapping heat. So you ain't had no energy last year. It must be something you have on the inside of your body. You know how they always say? You're detoxing your liver and your kidneys, and something you have on is draining all of your energy. Like you don't have the proper nutrients and things inside. So you got to get rid of some and replace it with something new. Right? And it traps heat because you need heat for things to grow. But it also means offers security, serves as a waiting area. Right, so going to the book of Matthew, chapter 25 and verse 1. 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 Then the Malkut of Shanym will be likened unto 10 virgins, who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them are foolish, and 5 of them were wise. That's why we just read that in Ephesians chapter 5. You got to understand what the will of Yahuwah is, but you got to be wise at the same time. But guess what it says? But the wise, it says, for when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil. But the wise took flask of oil with their lamps. And as the bridegroom delayed, they became drowsy and slept. So they became drowsy and slept. You know why? It improves energy efficiency by trapping heat, offers security, and serves as a waiting area. Right? You know how this says. But it says, as the bridegroom delayed, they became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him. So they were waiting for him. Literally. Because it was a watch time. Right? When you ain't got no energy, then guess what? You're going to sleep. But at midnight there was a cry, and here the bridegroom comes out to meet him. Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. Our lamps are going out. That's what they do today. Because your lamp going out. That's why you want some oil. That's the only reason. Because your lamp out. And guess what? But the wise answered, saying, since there will be not enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. Because you know what's going to happen to that? Think about an Ish who got to provide for his house. Because they're going to need olive oil. Matter of fact, they're going to need barley. You're going to need wheat. You're going to need everything you need to perform everything so everybody can be in proper standing, so that when the bridegroom comes, he'll be able to say, come on in, come in, right? Because you're sitting outside waiting. But verse 9 says, but the wise answered, saying, since there will be not enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, to get married. Notice how long they were cleansing themselves, to the 8th day, all the way to the 16th day, right? But you see the waiting times that they had to do. Answered, verse 11, afterward the other virgins came also, saying, Master, open to us. But he answered, truly, truly, I say to you, I do not know you. He said, I don't know you. But guess what? Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor hour. He said, you better watch. Which means you got to be wise, knowing what the will of Yahuwah is. And you got to submit yourself, even as the congregation submits to Yahusha Mashiach, so the wives submit to their husband in everything. Right? But it says right here, going back to the slide, it says it serves as a waiting area or storage for coats, shoes, and reduces noise. Why? Originating from the Latin vestibulum, entrance court, these structures range from residential foyers to commercial lobbies to, it says, church nartheses and train car entrances. Right? All these are a part. He said you want to get on the train, but it says right here. So you go to. So this is interesting. Right? Go to see this mouth thing right here. It says mouth. It says the vestibule. This is in your mouth. The area between the cheeks and the teeth. And the oral cavity proper. It says, and the oral cavity proper. The latter section is mostly filled by the tongue. It'll say what? A large muscle firmly anchored to the floor of the mouth by the frenulum, or ligure, in addition to its primary rolling, right? So this is the book of Psalms, actually Proverbs. This is the book of Proverbs. I think it's the book of Proverbs, Mashali, Proverbs chapter 4. Mashali, I think it's 4 and 1. Mashali, Proverbs chapter 4. I think it's 4. Yeah, go to 4 and 1. Mostly Proverbs 4 and 1. 4 and 1. Mostly Proverbs 4 and 1. And it says, hear, O sons, a father's instructions, and be attentive that you may gain insight. For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, right? So you know how you have a child and you're able to talk about the experiences that you had with your father. He said, when I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me also and said to me. So if the father don't pass down to the sons the information, you ain't gonna be able to give to your other next son. But the only reason this is happening today in an alarming rate is because what we just read in Ephesians chapter 4. It says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands in everything. But when you don't, this will not happen. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast to my words, keep my commandments and live. So even as the congregation is subject to Yahusha Mashiach, let the wives be subject to their husbands in everything. Get wisdom and get insight. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. But guess what happens? Do not forsake her and she will keep you. Love her and she will guard you. The beginning of wisdom is this. Get hukmah, wisdom. Because the wise says to the fools, why should we give you some of our oil? Lest it won't be not enough for us. Go to the dealers and buy for yourself. Get wisdom, and whatever you get insight. Prize her highly. So you got to prize this hukmah highly. And she will exalt you. He says she will exalt you. What happens? She will honor you. If you embrace her. For he that loveth his wife loveth himself. And if he says what? Husbands, love your wives as Mashiach loved the congregation. And he gave himself up for it. And he says, she will bestow on, you know what it says? She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. But guess what? Hear, my son, and accept my words, that the years of your life may be many. Why? I have taught you the way of wisdom, and I have led you in the paths of uprightness. Get what it says. When you walk, your steps will not be hampered, and in your run, and if you run, you will not stumble. Right? You gotta be in shape. Right, going back to the vest, you gotta be in shape. Right, so this is the Ayub chapter 22, 21 through 21 through 30. Job 22, 21 through 30. Agree with Yahuwah and be at peace. Shalom. Thereby good will come to you. Matter of fact, you get a crown and wisdom will exalt you. And he said, be at peace. Receive instruction from my mouth. My son, do not forget it. And lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Shadi, you will be built up. You will be exalted. If you remove injustice from your tent, injustice far from your ohel or tent, if you lay gold in the dust and gold Ophir among the stones of the torrent bed, then the Shadi will be your gold and your precious silver. He'll be the most valuable thing you own. But guess what? For then you will delight yourself in the Almighty, and you will lift up your face to Yahuwah. You will make your prayer to him, and he will hear you. And you will pay your vows. So you're going to have to pay. You got to pay something for those vows. You got to pay something for those vows. You will decide on a matter, and it will be established for you, and the light will shine on your ways. Your decision making will be properly, and the light will shine on everything you do, on your ways. For when they are shafal or low or brought low, you say it is because of pride. But Elohim saves the shock. Why would he say that? He delivers even the one who is not innocent, who will be delivered by the cleanness of his hands, right? So the word for agree is sakan. It says agree with Yahuwah. It means to be of use and service to Yahuwah, to be a benefit to Yahuwah. Because wives, submit yourselves to your husband as to Yahuwah, as to the master, as to Yahusha Mashiach. A servant, a steward, be a good steward, a benefit or profit, to show harmony with, to be familiar, right? It also means to minister, to be serviceable, to be customary, to acquaint, to be a treasure, intimately acquainted, a steward in Proverbs, right? To be profitable. Right? He said if you move injustice, that word for injustice, Avel, right? Avel, we went through that, but in injustice, unrighteous, violent deeds of injustice, speech. He say the vestibule, right in between your two cheekbones and your jaw. He says that right there, he say that right there is one of the main reasons why a lot of things don't work out. People say, why? Yeah, it don't work out. It means also evil, iniquity, perverseness, unrighteousness, wickedness. Right? Right, that word for tent is ohel. It means transient. It means wilderness life, right? Because when you're in the wilderness, when you traveling, you're in uncertain places, or when you're starting to move forward, these are one of the times when things start to come about. When you're a manager, when you're moving forward, it's easy to go back. That's the easiest thing. Climbing to the top of the mountain is the hardest thing. Walking forward is the hardest thing. When you get tired, when you get thirsty, when you don't have any food, that's when you start to say things out of your vestibule or at the gate of the door, at the gates of your own mouth, you'll start to say things that you should not say. And then that becomes something that is improper for Kodashim to say. Right? But it says right here, but he saves the shock in the verse 29. Why would he say the shock? Because he told him to put the gold and the silver, put all those things aside. Right? When we look, it also means sunk, downcast, humble, lowly, humble person. When you look at that word shock, right, you had the shun and the kath. Right? Shun means to devour and consume. So this person that humbles himself is devoured and consumed with his work and labor for gold. That's all they're thinking about their work, their labor for their gain and their money and all the things they're going to do. And that's all they think about. And he saves the people who puts all these things aside. And what day is this? The shabath day. He saves the lowly, the humble person, work, labor, who is so consumed in devouring and providing and doing all these things. Only the lowly person is going to stop and put it aside. Only the lowly person is going to do that. Right, so this is the book of Matthew. It's the book of Matthew, chapter 6, and verse 1. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 1. Matthew Yahoo chapter 6 and verse 1. And it says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in Shamayim. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no teruah before you, as the hypocrites do in the Adar, the congregations, and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, you have received your reward. Why? But when you give to the needy, do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father may reward you openly. Right? But this is the book of, this is that's all a part of it. You're going to Ukanan chapter 6 and verse 25. John chapter 6 and verse 25. John 6 and 25. This is John chapter 6 verse 25. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Teacher, Rabbi, when did you come here? Yahusha answered them, Truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate and were filled of the loaves. Why? Because that's what you have to do. You have to provide and give yourself up. But guess what it says? Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures unto eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you, for on him Elohim the Father has set his seal. Why? Because what food it perishes? He said he set his seal because he's trying to seal his body in their foreheads. He said he set his seal. What? Then they said to him, What must we do? What must we do to be sealed? Guess what he said? To be doing, he says, what must we do to be doing the works of Elohim? Yahusha answered them, This is the work of Elohim, that you believe in him whom he has sent. Because if you laboring for the food that perishes, ain't no way you're going to believe in him who has sent. Why? Because it's in the Torah. If you're laboring in the bar, how you going to wash your household clean if you're not laboring in the word, the bar? There's no way you can do that. So they said to him, Then what sign do you do, that we may see and believe you? And what work do you perform? You know how they say, right? What work you got? You know how in the world you got your accolades. What's your resume? What work you do? Where you work at? What job you go to? What you got to work? How you make your money? How you pay your bills? How you provide for your household? Right? Because they want to get in your business. How you provide for your household? How you get gain to help everybody? But yet you saying don't work for the food that labor, but how you get your money? Yahusha answered them, This is the work of Elohim, that you believe in him whom he sent. So they said to him, Then what sign do you do, that we may see and believe? And what work do you perform? Our fathers ate the man in the wilderness, as it is written. He gave them bread from the Shamayim to eat. Yahusha said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moshe who gave you the bread from Shamayim. Because that's what people think. You know how when you provide for your household, they be saying, I provided for your household, right? He said it wasn't Moshe who did that, though. Even though he was the head of the household, even though he was the head, but he said it wasn't him that did it. It wasn't him who gave you the bread, the lakam. It was not Moshe who gave you the bread from Shamayim, but my Father gives you the true bread from Shamayim. He said, he the one gave it to you. Why he give it to you? For the bread of Elohim is he who comes down from Shamayim and gives life to the world. Who is that? Who said, I'm the bread which came down from Shamayim. So if your Ish is giving you the bread which come down from Shamayim, then what is he giving you? Who gave him that? Oh, let me guess. He figured it out his own. he studied it, man. He labored for the meat, but that thing, he brought it out, right? No, he didn't do anything. Yahuwah gave it to him. That's the only reason. That's the only way you can do it. For the bread of Elohim is he who comes down from Shamayim and gives life to the world. They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread. Give us this bread always, man. We want this bread that gives life to us always, man. He gonna give us that energy source." When you learn about Yahusha Mashiach, then guess what? You get the bread which comes out from Shamayim. You know that bread? That's the him. When you get more knowledge of him and the understanding of him, that's the bread which comes down from Shamayim. That gives life to your soul, your nefesh. That's what allows you to ascend and get out of the grave. Yahusha said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst." So if you never hunger or thirst, there's no way you can mumble, grumble, and complain. Because he's providing for his household. Yahusha is. He said, so as the congregation was subject to Yahusha Mashiach, so let the wives be subject to the husband in everything. But guess what? But I said to you that you have seen me and you do not believe. You say you don't even believe me. You looking right at me too. And you don't even believe. All that my Father gives me will come to me. It's going to come to me. And whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. He said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. For I have come down from Shamayim, not to do my own will, because that's what our own will is to do, but the will of him who sent me. Right? That's all part of it, right? So this is the book of Exodus, Shamuth, Exodus chapter 15. Exodus chapter 15, 22 through 26. Shamuth, Exodus chapter 15, 22 through 26. Then Mashah made Yasharal set out before the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. Why? Because Yasharal is married to Yahuwah. And guess what? And they went 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. You know, just like it talks about wilderness life, or hell, your tent life. Your ohel, but he said move Eyul out of it, and guess what it meant? Your speech. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Yahusha said, I got bread that make you never hunger or thirst again. But guess what? When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water because it was bitter. They couldn't do it. Right? This is the book of Ephesians. Yeah, so this is the book of James. Book of James, chapter 3, and verse 13. Book of James, chapter 3, verse 13. Jacob, chapter 3, verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his good works in a new meekness of Hukmah, wisdom. Why? Because we just read him. When he gave wisdom to his son, he said, my son, this wisdom, it will exalt you. Matter of fact, it will give you a crown too. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambitions in your heart, do not boast and be false to the truth. Don't. Why? This is not the wisdom that comes from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambitions exist, there will be disorder and every practice of evil. That's what happens when you have selfish ambitions. Because if you're not in subjection to Yahusha Mashiach, if you're not in subjection to your husband, and everybody not in subjection to nothing, then guess what? It's all selfish ambitions. Everything is all selfish. You're only thinking about yourself. And you know what happens when you think about yourself? He says, but it says, for where jealousy and selfish ambitions exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. As you go on to verse 15, this is not the wisdom that comes from above. Because you know, Yahusha said, I'm the bread which came down from Shanym. Didn't he say that? I got bread and you'll never hunger or thirst again. But he said, this is not the hukmah that comes from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. So if all these things exist, you got demons. You got shadim, demons, in your household, in your life, in your family, in your building, in your congregation, and all this stuff that you have, in your Adar, in your community. This is not, he says, for where jealousy and selfish ambitions exist, there it will be disorder in every vile practice. But wisdom from above is first pure. Why? Because it comes from the Shamayim. It's not bitter. Then peaceable. Why? Because shalom. Because you know why it's peaceable? Because they made peace with Yahuwah and they removed Ayul out of their ohel, injustice out of their tents. And then they offer their prayer to Yahuwah and he hears them. But guess what happens if he doesn't? But then peaceable, then gentle. Because you got to submit to all humility, all gentleness, and have courtesy to all people. Open to reason. Why? Because there's no point in sitting at the table talking about hukmah and wisdom with somebody. And understanding, wisdom and understanding with somebody who feel like they're a dominant individual and they want to use profanity, curse you out, tell you ain't nothing, make you feel like you ain't nothing, downgrade you, make you feel like you ain't nothing. You're just gonna create a quarrel in the fight. There's no point in talking to somebody who thinks they know it all, thinks they have everything together, and there's no point in even trying to conversate with you. There's no point. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time and energy. It creates evil. That's all it does. Full of mercy and good fruits. It's going to have all the fruits of the Ruach. It ain't going to have none of the hatred. It's not going to have that. Impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness, right, is sown in peace. Shalom. So if you come to disturb somebody's peace just to talk to them and to have some type of wisdom like dialect, but you're disturbing their peace to do it, then there's no way in the world that is something that's going to be anything profitable for that individual to do, because you started in a violent, rage, angry type of way. There ain't going to be no reasoning. There's not going to be nothing peaceful or gentle. It's going to be all fake. It's going to be like a fake plant you put in your house and you don't even hear, speak, or talk. You know, that fake plant, it ain't got no feeling to it. You can set it on fire to set ablaze. It'll burn up. It ain't even real. You can't even plant it in the ground. A bird won't even land on it if you plant it in your land. A harvest of righteousness is sown in shalom by those who make peace, right? That's the whole point. But why we went there? All right, going back to Exodus 15:23. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Right? What happens if he says washing of water by the word of Yahuwah? And then we just read that in Ephesians. He's going to set it apart and cleanse it by the washing of the water by the bar. But if the bar has bitterness in it, what type of water what type of cleansing is that? Therefore, it was named Marah. And the people grumbled against Mashah, saying, "What shall we drink?" You know how now they got thirsty, and now they say, "What shall we drink?" But Yahusha said, "I'm the bread which came down from Shamayim." When people say, "What shall we drink?" Yahusha said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." He said, "As rain and snow come down from Shamayim, so that the bar be that comes out of my mouth, out of Yahuwah's mouth. It shall not return to him void, but it shall accomplish everything he sent it to do." And when Yahusha came and died for your sins, and from the 6th and the 9th hour he cried out, he would even fulfill the very people who are crying out and grumbling right here against Mashah, saying, "What shall we drink?" Because when they offered Yahusha to drink on totality, he would not drink it the first time, and he was solid. Then they offered him again, and he cried out. Verse 25, and he cried to Yahuwah, and he cried out. That's what Yahusha did on the cross. And Yahuwah showed him a log, and he gave up the ruach. Because you know, a log is something that's cut away from a tree. And it's what? It's not attached. It's dead. And he threw it in the water, and the water became sweet. That dead log that cried out and gave up the ruach was that dead log he threw in the water and became sweet. And you know what happens when when you put that water in that bitter water? You know how a husband get bitter, or your wife get bitter, everybody get bitter. All you have to do is throw a log in there, and then the waters become sweet again. Because if you don't put the log in there, you know, that dead log that cried out on totality on the cross, and you don't put it back in that water, that you trying to wash somebody clean by the word of Yahuwah. If you don't put that back in that water, ain't nothing sweet gonna come out of it. You know how I say, like a grateful woman, right? That's so sweet. Ain't gonna be none of that. It's gonna be hatred, hatred, straight up, fire hot. There ain't gonna be none of that. I promise you. But that's why you gotta know it. By continual washing of the bar. And it says, and it goes down. It says, there Yahuwah made them a statute and a rule. Now we talked about obeys all my statutes and my rules. This person shall surely what? He shall surely live in Ezekiel 18. And a rule, and there he tested them. Right? These are all the things you say, why Yahuwah be testing? Right. This is the book of Bereshit chapter 2. Actually, Bereshit chapter 3 and verse 1. Bereshit chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, did not Elohim say to you, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but Elohim said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Well, guess what happened? But the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die. There go that bitter water. That's that bitter water right there. Right? You better find a way to get that log back in there. You gotta get that log in there. What happens right there? Your eyes, he says, for Elohim knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. He said, you're going to be like who? He said, you're going to know good and evil. So, and guess what happens? So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was the light to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, because you know 5 are wise and 5 are foolish. Five were wise and 5 were foolish. She took of its fruit and ate. And guess what happened? And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. And their eyes were both opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths, which means now you became blind. You done became blind, and now you don't know anymore. That's what happens when you get the bitter water. Because bitter water makes you go blind. It affects your health. It affects your decision making. That's how we read in Iyub chapter 22. It affects your decision making. It does. And guess what happens? It affects your decision making. Going to the book of Luke, it affects your decision making. Luke chapter 6 and verse 17. Luke chapter 6 verse 17. Luke chapter 6 verse 17. Or y'all 6:17. And he came down with them and stood on a level place, with a great crowd and his disciples and a great multitude of the people and all Judea and Jerusalem, and the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Because you know, when you drink bitter water, you know what happens? Your decision making gets off. You don't make proper decisions. You know, the words that come out of your mouth, out of your vestibule, out of your portico, out of your ulu, you know what happens? It usually turns bitter. And you're going to need somebody to heal your diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. When you have selfish ambitions and all types of things inside, it's going to be every vile practice. He said these things are unspiritual and demonic. It's all demonic. And guess what? And all the crowd sought to touch him, for power came out from him and healed them all. He said it healed them all. And the waters were made bitter, but then when that power came out from him, man, the water became sweet. It healed them all. And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, what did he do? So after he did all that, Barak are you who are poor. You know what I say? For yours is the kingdom of Elohim. Why? Because you labor not for the meat, labor not for the food which perishes. Because he saves the shock. You know, the ones who put aside their work and their labor and all the things that they do. Verse 21, Barak are you who are hungry now. He said, I got some food that'll make you neither hunger nor thirst again. If you hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Barak are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Barak are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, and revile you, and spurn your name as evil on the account of the son of Yahuwah. Why? Rejoice in that day, and leap for joy. You know, people will say when you start doing this, they'd be like, you're supposed to be bitter. You're supposed to have this in your heart. You're supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be doing all. And you start jumping and singing joyful songs and jumping around. You know what that make them do? That make them get upset. And they're going to hate you. They're going to hate you even more. Why? Because when you go back, just as the congregation is subject to Yahusha Mashiach, so let the wives be subject to your husbands in everything. Subjection, right? But woe to those who, but it says, they will spurn your name as evil. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. And behold, your reward is great in Shamayim. For so their fathers did to the Nabi'im. They said they did the same thing. But guess what it says in 24? But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Why? Because you didn't labor for the food that can wash your household by the continual washing of the word. So therefore you have nothing to wash them with. What you gonna do? Melt some gold and wash them with gold? Like literal gold? You gonna be like gold dust? No, that's not gonna help them. Here you go. You know how it is. I need some money. Give him a gold bar, gold coin, give some money, right? He said that's not gonna help them get no salvation. That's not gonna have them spot or wrinkle or any such thing. That's not gonna really. That's temporary. That's a temporary thing. It says, but woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, because you know for you shall be hungry. And where you see the world going to today? Everybody was full. Everybody was consuming, eating everything, stuff in their face. Now the prices done went up. And now you're hungry. But guess what he said? I got some bread you'll never hunger or thirst again. I'm the bread, the lakam, which came out from Shamayim. But you know when Yahusha and Yehuda get hungry, they start saying things out of their mouth, right? Not even understanding. They come out of their portico gate. It says, woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you. For so their fathers did to the false Nabi'im. So that's how you know. Right, going back to Exodus 15:26. Actually 15 and 25. There Yahuwah made them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them. That's all he's doing. I said, I want to see if you love your Isha like you say. I want to see if you love your husband like you say. I want to see if you actually will do this like you said. That's all it is. That's the only reason. Saying, if you will diligently listen to my voice, of the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on Mizraim. That's why Yahusha came. We just read it. He said he parked himself right in the middle of all the people. He said, you know what? And he let them touch it. And everybody who did, they were healed. That's why do you think he parked himself right there in the middle of all those people? Because they didn't know keep his rules, his commandments, and his statutes. That's why they had all those sicknesses and diseases on them. So that's why he was sitting right there. He like, yeah. Baraka are you, the poor. Baraka are you. Baraka are you. When people hate you, they're gonna hate you for doing this. Why he parked right here? He said, why you doing that? I will put none of the diseases that I put on the Mizraim, for I am Yahuwah, your healer. Why do you think Yahusha was healing people right there? What do you think he was parked right there for? And he parked his car. Now he said, I'm gonna park right here for a minute. You know how you have a nice car, people have a nice car, they labor for that too. Nice Ferrari, and people walk by and they look at it and they be like, man, can I touch your car? Right? Can I touch it? Can I touch it? I know the doors come up like this and they come up in the air like the McLaren from Back to the Future. I like that, man. I like that. Let me touch that thing. Let me take a picture by it. But Yahusha said, Yahusha will part there to heal all the people of their diseases. Because that was more valuable. Right? That was more valuable, right? This is Shemuth, Exodus 16, 1 through 8. They set out from Elam. Notice they complained the first time. They were saying these things. But at the same time, you have to understand when people get thirsty and they get hungry, they're going to say stuff. And as a manager, you got to understand that. Because if you don't, your children going to say something. If you get hungry, your wife going to say something. Your household going to say stuff when they ain't got no food and they ain't got no water and they ain't got nothing to eat. They ain't got nothing to mix together to make something sweet. That's why he had to put the log in the water to make the bitter water sweet. And amazingly, that's what you got to put in your water to make your water sweet. They set out from Elam, and all the congregation and all the people of Yashar came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month, right? Because we already know what that is. When you start getting in the second month, you start getting into another day, right? They say the second Pesach, but we're not getting into that. And after they had departed from the land of Mizraim, and the whole congregation of the people of Yasharal grumbled against Ashar and Harun in the wilderness, right? You see that? That's why you gotta be a good manager. You gotta understand that people gonna say stuff. When things, you know how you be in a car and the children be like, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" Or you be there, and guess what? They grumbled against Ashar and Aaron in the wilderness. That's what they're gonna do. If you're gonna be a good manager, he says, husbands, he said, love your wives as Mashiach love the congregation. Matter of fact, and the people of Yashar said to them, would that we have died by the hand of Yahuwah in the land of Mizraim when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. Man, we were able to stuff our face, right? Buffet, right? Like them buffets back in the day, right? You know how it is. French toast galore. Syrup, right? Everything you could do. Throw it down, right? All the things. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Throwing it down. We ate to the full. Man, we was full all the time. Why we always hungry now? But he said, who we just read in Yahusha said. He said, Baraka, you are hungry now. For you shall be full, right? Because everybody, you need to be hungry. You need to be poor. You need to be needy. You need to need him. But when you start, that's what they're doing here. Nobody needs you nobody wants anything from you until they need something. And you got to understand that as a man. You got to realize they only flesh. If they need something, you're gonna have to get it for them. For you have brought us out in this wilderness to kill us. This tent life. Because you gotta move Ayul out of your tent. That's out of your speech too. The words you say. That's what Yahuwah did. The whole assembly with hunger. He's like, man, you trying to kill us all. The whole household. Man, we hungry. You traveling, and then guess what? Somebody just don't have no food, no water, nothing to drink. They gonna say something to you. Right? You gotta make sure you understand what's going on. Because if you don't, you're just gonna make them more bitter, more full of hatred. You don't love yourself. He says, husband, love your wife, you love yourself. Because everybody ain't the same. Verse 4, then Yahuwah said to Mashah, behold, I am about to rain bread from Shamayim for you. I'm about to make you rain. But who gave him the bread? We just read it earlier. He said, Mashah didn't give you that bread. Yahuwah gave him the bread. He the one provided for you. Mashah didn't provide, but notice what Mashah did. Then Yahuwah said to Mashah, behold, I'm about to rain down bread from Shamayim for you. For who? For you, for your sake. For the man's sake, for the head's sake. For your sake, I'm going to rain down on you. Why? For your sake. Because they's talking about you right now. So for your sake, I'm going to break you off. Why? And the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day. He's like, and they're going to be able to get it because I'm going to help you out. That I may test them. That's the only reason. People say, man, why Yahuwah be breaking the family off? Why he break a whole household off? Why he break and give you things? It's to test you. So please don't be thinking like, I'm Barak in the city. You know how I'm Barak everywhere I go. Everything I touch is gold. Anything that Yahuwah gives you is a test. It's a test for you. It's a test for your Ashars, your Nashim, your household, your men servant, your maid servant, your ox, your donkey, everything in your household. It's a test for all y'all. People say, no, it's a test for you. It says, whether they will walk in my Torah law or not. I'm telling you, that's the whole point of it. It has nothing to do with anything else. Anything Yahuwah put in your hand and give to you, a premonition. He told me, yes, to do this and that. Because we talked about wisdom, my son. Don't let wisdom forsake wisdom. He's going to exalt you and give you a crown. Right? But it says right here, verse 5, it says, on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. He says, on the 6th day, that's Shishit, right? Shishiyum, right? It say what? You gonna have way more than what you did. So the 6th day, that's like, man, it will give you just enough. So Mashah and Aharon said to all the people of Yasharal, at evening you shall know that it was Yahuwah who brought you out of the land of Mizraim. You gonna know then. After you see this. And in the morning you shall see the kabod of Yahuwah, because he has heard your grumbling against Yahuwah. But it said they grumbled against Mashah. No. He said, you grumble against Yahuwah himself. Just as the congregation is subject to Yahusha Mashiach, so that the wives be subject to their husbands in everything, in subjection. He said, you didn't grumble against Yahusha Mashiach. You grumble against Yahuwah. That's the whole point. He said, you didn't grumble against your Ish, you grumble against Yahusha Mashiach. That's what he did it to. And then when you grumble against Yahusha Mashiach, then you grumble against Yahuwah himself. For what are we that you grumble against us? And Mashah said, when Yahuwah gives you in the evening meat to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, because Yahuwah has heard your grumbling, that you grumble against him. What are we? Your grumbling is not against us, but against Yahuwah himself. Right? So then people say, what does that got to do with anything? That word for grumble is Taluna. Taluna, right? And you can do it on the tail, tele, right? But they got Taluna. It means to be murmuring. It means exalted and lofty, right? So you're not lowly right now. He's a humble. Einu, ana, sana, anu. He says, now you've exalted oneself. A murmuring. He said, you taluna. But what he did it on the 6th day. But then, when you rest in your work, you put your work and your labor aside, because the 6th day represents what? Shashi, right? The day before the Shabbat. And then on the Shabbat, they had way more than what they needed. So therefore, you shouldn't hear no complaining on the day of rest, right? No more complaining, right? Shouldn't even hear that. But that's the whole point of that. We're going to get into the rest, but here you go. This is Numbers chapter 20, 1 through 3. There's a reason to all this. And the people of Yahusha and the whole congregation came to the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month. And the people of Yahusha and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation, right? There was no water. But Yahusha said, I am the bread which comes down from Shanym. And you'll never hunger or thirst. And they assembled themselves together against Mashah and Aharon, and the people quarreled with Mashah and said, would that we have perished with our brothers when our brothers perished before Yahuwah. He said, man, we would rather just been with them, with Kura. He said, we would rather perish with them. Why have you brought the assembly of Yahuwah into the wilderness that we should die here, both we and our cattle? He said, what'd you bring me all the way out here for, to die? And why have you made us come out of Mizraim to bring us to this evil place? He said, what? To this evil place. He said, it's evil here. So what do you think Yahuwah doing right here? Again, another test. It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates. There is no water to drink, man. There ain't no figs, we ain't got no fruit. No figs, no pomegranates, right? You put that stuff in your body, but he said ain't no vines here, ain't no grapes. Ain't no water to drink. Then Mashah and Aharon went from the presence of the Adar assembly to the entrance of the tent meeting and fell on their faces. He said they did what? That's the best thing to do. And the kabod of Yahuwah appeared to them. That's the only way the kabod, people say, how the kabod of Yahuwah going to appear to you? Now you see why, as the husband is the head, the Ish is the head, that's how you get things, that's how you get the kabod of Yahuwah. That's how you get contact with him. And guess what? And Yahuwah spoke to Mashah, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Harun and your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. Tell it. Speak to the rock and yield its water. The Abin. He said, I want you to speak to the rock and it yields its water. Why? What happens when you speak to the rock? It's going to open your sound vibrational that comes from your mouth, that you're obeying Yahuwah's voice. It's going to split the rock and the water going to come out. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Mashah took the staff from Yahuwah as he commanded. Then Mashah and Aaron gathered the Adar people together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels!" Right? So now he got hot. Now notice how he changed his speech, because that's what happens when you become a manager. Everything starts when things start to go haywire, and people start to complain and mumble, and complain and start saying what you ain't doing, what you ain't got, what's going on with you. You're gonna feel like they're a bunch of rebellious people, or rebellious household, rebellious Ashar, rebellious children. But it has nothing to do with that. It's just the fact that they want stuff. And if you don't give it to them, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. But it says, Hear now, you rebels. Shall we bring water out of this rock? And Ashar lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. He struck the rock twice. And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank and their livestock. He hit them twice. Why do you think they smoked Yahusha in the face? He said the stone which the builders rejected became the head of the corner. Why do you think they hit him in the face? In Matthew 26 and 27. Why do you think they did that? In Luke 23, Luke or 23. Why do you think they smacked him in the head? Why do you think he cried out twice? You imagine your parents beating you for no reason at all. You hit you with a rock. Like, you know how it says your face hard as a rock? But that was Yahusha's face they hit with the rock. He said, man, you make your house hard like a mountain. Hard, they made their faces hard like a rock in Yerim Yahu. And he smoked them with the rock. Ashar hit that rock. And that rock split. And you know what happened? Water came out. You know how you get tears when you cry? Somebody hit you real hard. Let somebody hit you hard enough. Tears gonna come down from your face. You're gonna start crying. That's what happened to Yahusha Mashiach. He started to cry after they hit him in the face because the waters they were drinking was his tears. That was his tears they were drinking. When you hit somebody in the face really hard and they start to cry, that's the water that comes from his mouth, his face. That's the tears that came from his face. And that was your drink. And when you become a manager, that's what's going to happen to some. But that's the same thing. He said, as the Mashiach was, the congregation is subject to Mashiach, so let the wives be subject to their husband in everything, that he might cleanse it and wash it by the continual washing of the Adar. For Yahusha he said, husband, love your wives. Mashiach loved the congregation. He gave himself up for it. He even shed some tears. Matter of fact, he got hit in the head with a reed twice. And he cried and he shed tears for you. And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank and their livestock. And Yahuwah said to Ashar and Aharon, because you did not believe in me. Here we go. That's what happens. When you get to the point and Yahuwah tell you to do something, and you're a manager, you're a head, and then you don't do what he says, and you do opposite, this is what's going to happen to you. Even though they got you angry, you say you rebellious, just like Yeshayahu said. Now, Yeshayahu said you were rebellious from the beginning, right? You were a rebel. You like Nimrod, right? You know how people say. But guess what happens? And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank in their livestock. And Yahuwah said to Ashar and Aharon, because you did not believe in me to uphold me as Kudash in the eyes of the people of Yasharal, because Yahuwah looks at, okay, you don't obey me, and I told you to speak to the rock, then you want to do something opposite. You want to make it look like it was you. That's why they said Yahuwah, the one gave you the bread from Shammai. He the one gave you the drink. But when Ashar started doing his own thing, he's like, oh, you gave me the drink, Ashar. Woo! Well, you hear how you hit that rock? He smacked it in the head, right? You the one gave me the drink. No, Ashar didn't give you that drink. But when you don't obey the bar, it looks like you did it. It look like you provided for them. It'll look like you did everything for them. But in actuality, it was Yahuwah himself. Actually, it was Yahusha Mashiach. Who had asked Yahuwah, oh yeah, you can give it to him. And Yahuwah said to Ashar and Aharon, because you did not believe in me to uphold me as Kudash in the eyes of the people of Yasharal, therefore you shall not bring this assembly, Adar, into the land that I have given them. Right? And then when you start to do these things, and you're a manager in your household, and you start to go opposite Yahuwah, then Yahuwah curse you. He cursed the Ish. He curses you. He stops your movement patterns. He doesn't allow you to go anywhere. You're like, man, look like I can't go nowhere. Exactly. Therefore, you should not bring the assembly into the land that I am giving you. You ain't going to do nothing. These are the waters of Meribah. This is what happens when you get bitter. When your people of Yahusha quarreled with Yahuwah, and through them he showed him Kudash, right? He said through them, right? So what does that got to do with anything? Right, so there's a book of this book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse 17. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 17. Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. And when it says, and whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Master Yahusha, giving thanks to Yahuwah the Father through him. Why? Because that was the whole point of that whole situation. Yahuwah told him to speak to the rock, water pour out. They give thanks to Yahuwah, and guess what happens? Everything would have been good. Verse 18: Wives, submit to your husbands, as is fitting in Yahuwah, because it is. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. What did he say? Then Ashar and Aaron gathered the Adar, his household, together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels. Shall we bring water out of this rock?" So when you start being harsh, this is what's going to happen. And Ashar lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. And water came out abundantly. And the rock started crying. And Yahuwah said, "Because you did not uphold me Kudash in the people of Yahusha's eyes, therefore you not going to bring them over." Verse 20, children, obey your parents. That's what Mashah and Aharun are for these children, because they're the children of Yahusha. That's what a husband and a wife has to be with children. These are what children do. So you're like Aharun and Mashah. That's what children do. And the children obey your parents in everything. So that means everybody do everything in everything. And never do these things, right? You had a lot of nevers, right? But everything and never. Notice how you use never, all, never, and everything. Right? That's what it says. All, everything, and never. For this pleases Yahuwah. So how you gonna please Yahuwah? You say, I want to please Yahuwah. Okay. Husbands, love your wives. Do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents. And wives, submit to your own husbands. Notice it has that first, as it's fitting in Yahuwah. Because if the wives don't do that, ain't no way you're going to have a functioning household. It's going to be off. And you ain't going to be pleasing Yahuwah with your household. At all. I know Satan, Shaitan, going to try to trick some people into thinking that they actually pleasing Yahuwah with their household. Absolutely not. He'll try to trick you, though, and make you think, man, I'm pleasing Yahuwah. In actuality, no. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. Right? That's the whole point. You want to get to the point. You want to have things prepared to where it don't get to this point. But if it does get to this point, we know it's a test. It's a test to see if you're going to obey Yahuwah and keep him as Kudash when he's testing you or not. And that's the whole point of it, right? But it says, made him Kudash, right? Go on, skipping over. This is Deuteronomy chapter 3, Dabarim chapter 3, 1 through 29. Dabarim chapter 3, 1 through 29. Then Deuteronomy, Dabarim 3, 1 through 29. Then we turned and went up the way to Bashan. And Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us. Man. He and all his people at the battle of Avredi. And Yahuwah said to me, do not fear him. For I have given him and all his people into the land and his land into your hand. Right, so you have to keep communication. Right, because each got to keep communication. Because if you don't, you ain't going to know what's yours You ain't gonna know what's yours. And you ain't gonna know what battles you're gonna win. And what battles to stay away from. Because if Yahuwah, through his Ben Yahusha, is leading you, you should know what's yours and what you should not mess with. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon and the king of Amorites who lived at Heshbon. So Yahuwah our Elohim gave into our hand Og, also the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we struck him down until he had no survivor left. You know how it is. No survivor. You can't leave none. And we took all his cities at that time. There was no city, not a city that we did not take from them. 60 cities. Think about that. 60 cities. The whole region of Argob. The kingdom of Og is, it says, Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. And all these were cities fortified with high walls, gates, bars, besides very many unwalled villages. And we devoted them to destruction. As we did Sihon, the king of Heshbon, devoting to destruction every city, men, women, and children. Can you imagine that? But all the livestock and all the spoils of the city we took as our plunder. So we took the land at that time out of the hand of the two kings of the Amorites, who were beyond Yarden, from the valley of Arnon to Mount Hermon. The Sidonians call Hermon Siron, while the Amorites call it Seir. And all the cities of the table, and all of Gilead, and all Bashan, as far as Serach and Redi, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, the king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. Right? He is what? Man, he was the only one left of the remnant of the giants. The Rephaim. We mean, you have a Rephaim giant as king, and then you had to kill the women, men, women, and children. Why? Because those are the remnants of the giants. And if you didn't destroy them all, they had to get rid of all the remnant of the giants, that DNA code, that line. It says, behold, his bed was a bed of iron. It is not in Rabbah of the Ammonites. It was 9 cubits was its length, and 4 cubits was its breadth. How much is that? 9 plus 4 is what? 13. 13. According to the common cubit. Man, he was a giant. He said it was 9 cubits in length and 4 cubits in breadth. It was 13, according to the common cubit. Right? That's how big it was. He was a giant. Right? What's that got to do with anything? It does. It has a lot to do with a lot of stuff. But it's in verse 12. And when we took possession of the land at that time, I gave it to the Reubenites and the Gadites in the territory beyond Arer, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, and half the hill of Gilead with its cities, and the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, that is the region of Argob, I gave to the half tribe of Manasseh. He said, I gave it to the half tribe of Manasseh. Why he call him the half tribe of Manasseh? Manasseh was born from Yusuf from Asenath. He said, man, yeah, half tribes, right? And all the portion of Bashan is called the land of Rephaim. Right? Jair and the Meshites took all the region of Argob, that is Bashan, as far as the border of the Gerishites and the Machites, and called the village after his own name. Right, so this is the book of, what has it got to do with anything? This is the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms. I think it's 49. No, it's not 49. Right, yes. Psalm 68 and 15. Psalm 68 and 15. And it says, actually go to, Psalm 68 and 15. Actually going to verse 11, 68, 11. Yahuwah gives the word, the woman, it says that Yahuwah gives the word, the woman who announced the news are a great hope. He said, man, the woman announced the news. It's just like Ashar, when she cried, that wicked Haman, right? Fulfilling what Yahusha did on the totality, right? But all this is a part of it. And she was a good host. Matter of fact, she was a good host to King Yahusha and to Haman, right? Very good host. Because she was a good servant, Adar. Ain't that so, right? And it says, and the kings of the armies, they flee. The woman at home divided the spoil, right? You know how they got the spoil right here? And they took all the plunder and all of the city, and they brought it, because you got to bring it to the woman. I know people like, all the finances and money, things you get, the things you conquered in the world, you got to bring it home. Because if you don't, they're going to complain. That's the whole point. They're going to complain, mumble, grumble, complain, because that's the whole point. That's the whole point of this. She divided the spoil. Why? He got to know how to, he says, though you men lie among the sheepfolds, the wings of the doves covered with silver, its pinions and its shimmering gold. Right? He brought back all the silver and gold. But he said, let Yahuwah be your silver and gold. Put gold and the silver aside. Let Yahuwah be your silver and gold. But understand who gave it to you. Because Yahuwah told him, he said, I've given them into your hand. When the Almighty scatters kings, when the Almighty Shadi scatters kings there, let snow fall on Solomon, right? Because Yahuwah does it. You return to the Shadi, and guess what? He will hear your prayer, and he will heal you. Verse 15, O mountain of Elohim, mountain of Bashan, you mean a mountain of the giants, of Og, the 60 cities, with his bed at 9 cubits and 4 cubits in breadth. O mountain peak, O many peaked mountain, mountain of Bashan. Why do you look with hatred, O mighty peak mountain? He said, what you looking in hatred for? You giants, mountain of Bashan? At the mount that Elohim desired for his abode. He said, what you upset? You mad I took it from you? You mad I took it from you, Og? You Raphaim, you giant? I took it from you. Yes, where Yahuwah will dwell forever. Yahuwah put himself over the giants. Why do you think he did that? He said, I've given him into your hand. Because he wanted to put himself over the giants. I'm over the Bashan. I'm over the Raphaim. And guess what he did? The chariot, guess what it says? The chariots of Elohim are twice 10,000, thousands upon thousands, and Yahuwah is among them. Sinai is now in the sanctuary. Right? He said, man, look at that. You ascend on high, leading the host of captives in your train, and receiving gifts among men, even among the rebellious, that Yahuwah Elohim may dwell there. In the remnant of the Raphaims. Right? Barak be Yahuwah, who daily bears up. Elohim is our salvation. What do you mean? Elohim is our salvation. Yahuwah is our salvation. Elohim is an Elohim of salvation. And the Elohim, Yahuwah, belongs deliverance from death. He said, what does he got to do with anything? Because Yahusha said, if the son of Adam be lifted up, I'm going to draw all people to myself. Because I desire, what do you mean by that? Right, so this is the book of Psalms 22. Psalms 22. Psalms 22 and Psalms 22 and verse 10. Psalm Tahalim 22 and 10. On you was I cast from my birth, and from my mother's womb you have been my Elohim. Be not far from me, for trouble is near. He's like, be not far from me, for trouble is near. And there is none to help. Many bulls encompass me. Strong bulls of Bashan surround me. What do you mean by that? And guess what it says? Like a ravening and roaring lion, I am poured out like water. Oh, you know what Mashal do? He hit the rock. And then what happened? Water came out. He hit him twice. And guess what? And all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. Oh, you mean his portico? Oh, you mean his vestibule? You know, in between his two cheekbones, his jaw. He said, my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. Right? Why would he say? He said, strong bulls of Bashan surround me. Right? This is Matthew 27. Matthew 27:39. Matthew 27:37. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, this is Yahusha, the Malach of the Yahudim. Yahushua said, I desire the mountains of Bashan as my abode. That's what he did. Then the two robbers who were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left, and those who derided him, those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads, saying, you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. He said, man, so you saying you're going to destroy the kingdom of Og? Because remember, he desired it as his abode, his place of dwelling. And he said, you know what? Why are you full of hatred? Why are you upset? Because I destroyed and I desired it as my place, my dwelling place. And guess what he said? You would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the son of Elohim, come down from the cross. So also the chief priests and the scribes and the elders mocked him, saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the Malach of Yahusha, let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He said, man, you come down from that high place you at, we'll believe in you then. That's how people are. But guess what? He trusts in Elohim, let Elohim deliver him now, if he desires him. For he said, I am the son of Elohim. Right? We're going back to Deuteronomy, Dabarim, because strong bulls of Bashan had surrounded him right there. And that's why I think they were saying all those things about him. Those are the strong bulls of Bashan. You know, like right here when they got, going back to Exodus chapter 3 and verse 7. But all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as the plunder. You know those strong bulls of Bashan? We had them strong bulls of Bashan. We had them right there with us. You know them strong bulls of Bashan. You know Og's bulls. You don't know how big them bulls were. Remember, he was of the Rephaim. But them bulls were big. Them huge, right? You ever seen they got the mooses out there, they got all types of things, right? You'd be like, man, them things are giants, right? That bulls from Bashan was huge. Like he said, strong bulls of Bashan, they surrounded me. They had to be strong to carry them giants. They were little bulls. Them bulls was giant bulls. Why do you think Yahusha say, man, strong bulls of Bashan surrounded me on the totality on the cross? They were trying to get me to come down because I desired it as they could bow, right? The abode. Man, they were riding them big old bulls of Bashan. All right, skipping down to verse 12. Dabarim 3 and 12. And when we took possession of this land at that time, I gave to the Reubenites, the Gadites, the territory beginning with Oreb, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, and half the hill country of Gilead with its cities, the rest of Gilead and all Bashan. The king of Og, that is in the region of Argob, I gave to the half tribe of Manasseh, and all the portions of Bashan is called the land of Rephaim. And Jair the Meshite took all the region of Argob, that is in Bashan, as far as the border of the Gerashites and the Machites, and I called the villages after his own name. Right? It says, Hava Jair, as it is this day. To Machir I gave Gilead, and to the Reubenites and the Gadites I gave the territory of the Gilead, as far as the valley of Arnon, with the middle of the valley of as they border, as far over as the river Jabbok, the border of the Ammonites, and Arba also, with the Yarden as the border from Kireth, as far as the sea of Arba, the salt sea, under the slopes of Pisgah on the east. Right? All this is a part of it, but we skipping over. Right? Just Deuteronomy chapter 3:18. And yeah, it says, and I commanded you at that time, saying, Yahuwah your Elohim has given you this land to possess. He said, man, I stole it. I took it. You upset King of Og in Bashan. I desired the mountains of Bashan as my dwelling place. And guess what? And all your men of valor shall cross over armed before your brothers, the people of Yasharal. Only your wives and your little ones and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall remain in the cities that I have given you. He said, that's the only way. He said, keep them in the city, until Yahuwah gives rest to your brothers as to you. And they also occupy the land that Yahuwah your Elohim gives them beyond Yarden. Then each of you may return to his possession which I have given you. And I commanded Yahusha at that time, your eyes have seen all that Yahuwah your Elohim has done to these two kings. So will Yahuwah do to all the kingdoms in which you are crossing. You shall not fear them, for it is Yahuwah your Elohim who fights for you. What do you mean fights for you? Right, it's the book of Tahalim. He said, this is how you have to be. This is how you have to be. This is the book of Psalms, Tahalim. I don't know if it's this is the book of Psalms. I think it's Psalms or Proverbs. Psalms, Tahalim. Yeah, book of Psalms, chapter 35. Psalm Tahalim, chapter 35 and verse 1. Contend, O Yahuwah, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. He says, so who you think gonna fight against you when you fighting? He said, Yahuwah gonna fight against you. And guess what? Take hold of the shield and buckler and rise for my help. Draw the spear and the javelin against my pursuers. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. That's what happens. Right. Going back to Exodus, Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 3, verse 22. You shall not fear them, for it is Yahuwah your Elohim who fights for you. And I pleaded with Yahuwah at that time, saying, Yahuwah Elohim, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. Man, you just not showing me your greatness and your yard. You just took down the king of Bashan. The Raphaim. Right? You just now beginning to show me. For what Elohim is there in Shamayim or earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Ain't nobody can do that. Please let me go over and see the good land beyond Yarden. Because remember what he told him? He said, being that you didn't uphold me as Kudash among the people. He said, you're not going over to see the land. You're not going to lead them into the land. Even though he saw him take down Bashan and the king of Bashan. He said, man, you done took down giants. He's like, please let me go see the rest of this thing, right? Because you get angry when Yahuwah get angry with you. And he ain't get angry because people say, why he got angry? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond Yarden, that good hill country in Lebanon. In Lebanon, please. But Yahuwah was angry with me. With who? With Bashan. He said, but Yahuwah was angry with me because of you and would not listen to me. He said, what? He said, that's what can happen. He said, that's what can happen though. When you get to the point, you start being harsh and you start getting to the point where you're out of control and Yahuwah say you, okay, you're not listening to me anymore and you make a mistake, it can cost you a lot. It can cost you a lot. And when people start mumbling, grumbling, complaining, it can cost you a lot. It can cause Yahuwah to get angry with your whole household. Just by the words you say out of your vestibule. Out of your mouth. Right? It's coming from your inward man, or the outer parts. Right? We look at ourselves, right? And it says, and Yahuwah said to me, enough from you, right? So Yahuwah not listening to nothing you saying. When you start hearing Yahuwah say that, that's it. Do not speak to me of this matter again. So that means go ahead and do it again. No. You got to obey that too. True and righteous are your judgments. You see, you got to know how to talk. True and righteous are your judgments. Master. Yo, right? Yahusha Mashiach. That's it. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes westward, northward, southward, and eastward. All four corners of it. And look at it with your eyes. For you shall not go over this Jordan. And that's what can happen to Neish. But charge Yahusha and encourage and strengthen him. He said, give it to somebody else. For he shall go over at the head of this people. Just as the congregation is subject to Yahusha Mashiach, so let the wives be subject to their husbands in everything. Because what happened to Mashiach? He died. He died. And he had to give his bride to somebody else. And that husband, and by him dying, he was no longer the head anymore. And that she could be married to somebody else. But that same husband, whom he passed her to, so he knew he was going to die. He had to lead her into the kingdom. And people say, what does that got to do with anything? Right? This is 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 'He said, what does this got to do with anything? Man, this got to do with something with everything. Right? This is the book of, I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 14, 7. Actually, yeah, 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 36. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 36. If anyone thinks that he is not behaving himself properly, it's going over to verse 38. So then, actually go to 39. A wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. So Mashar was still, he said, but you're not going over to see the land. Even though he would lay out news, his countenance was not abated. And he was buried in the land of Moab, right? And then Yahusha took over. Joshua took over, right? But at the same time, a wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she wishes. Only in Yahuwah. Charge Yahusha and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of this people. Verse 40 says, or 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 40. Yet in my judgment, she is happier. She remains as she is. Right? But that's the whole point. The only reason I went there was for that. Right, this is Adar chapter 3, verse 27. Actually, verse 28. But charge Yahusha and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of this people, and he shall put them in possession of the land that you shall see. But you ain't going to go over there, though. You're going to see it, though. Oh, man. I saw it, too. So we remained in the valley opposite Beth Peor, right? So this is the whole point of that, right? This is the whole point, right? So this is the book of, we almost finished. This is the book of, Titus chapter 2 and verse 1. Titus chapter 2, verse 1. But as for you, teach what accords with sound doctrine. Older men are to be sober-minded, dignified, and self-controlled. You can't be a drunk. Why? Sound in amunah, in love, and in steadfastness. Why? Because you're going to have to, by continuing washing under the bar, you're going to have to wash your household by the bar of Yahuwah. If you're not faithful, and you're not steadfast in love and amunah and self-control, ain't no way you can do that. You're going to be like Ashar. Right here. Yahuwah was angry with me because of you and will not listen to me. But guess what happens? Older women likewise are reverent in behavior, not slanderers or slaves to much wine. They are to teach what is good and so train the young women to love their husbands and children. Because if you don't have a functioning household, how is a white woman going to love her children when the father can't tell his son about hukmah and wisdom? Because that's how he needs to be able to do, right? To be self-controlled, pure, working at home, kind and submissive to their own husbands, that the word of Elohim may not be reviled. And you know what happens when the word of Elohim is reviled? You know what you can't do when you're doing this behavior? You can't revile back. Because when Yahusha reviled, he didn't say nothing about it. When he was persecuted, he didn't even threaten nobody. You're going to have to take it patiently. When you are beaten for your evil behavior, you take it patiently. Or whether it's good. But at the same time, likewise urge the younger men to be self-controlled, showing yourself in all respect to be a model of good works. That's Damus Salim. That's what Damus Salim is. It's a model. Just like he told Zakar Nakabah in the beginning with Adam. When he created Adam in his own image and likeness, he said Damus Salim. It meant model. It says showing yourself in all respect a model of good works. In your teaching, show integrity, dignity, and sound speech that cannot be condemned, so that an opponent may be put to shame, having nothing evil to say about you. Because you're always going to have opponents. As a manager, people say, yeah, you're going to always have opponents. It's always going to be it's going to be like that until you die. Right? But that's the whole point. Right, so this is the book of Proverbs chapter 23. Proverbs chapter 23 in verse 22. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. That's the whole point. Buy truth and do not sell it. Matter of fact, go buy to the dealers, because the wise, the fools wanted oil. He said, go buy from those who sell it. Buy wisdom, instructions, and understanding. He said, go buy from the dealers who sell it. You know, they come. He said, no money, right? You know what I'm saying? If you're a fool, you don't have to pay a fee. He say a fine. You know who will make you pay. Verse 24, the father of the righteous will greatly rejoice. He who fathers a wise son will be glad in him. He said, man, you were real wise. You want a foolish son. Let your father and mother be glad. Let her who bore you rejoice. Why? Because that's the whole point. Being a Hakma, a son of Hakam and Hakma, let them rejoice. My son, give me your heart, and let your eyes observe my ways. But how you gonna do that if the wife don't love her children and love her husband? Because she gonna take it. And then my son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways. You ain't gonna be able to fulfill that. And you're not gonna please Yahuwah, as we read in Colossians. You know, it says this pleases Yahuwah. Ain't gonna happen. That's taken away. So verse 26, you can't fulfill. You know, Yahusha say, how the scripture gonna be fulfilled? How the Torah gonna be fulfilled? But you know what happens when you fulfill this? This is what happened to you. For a prostitute is a deep pit, and an adulteress is a narrow well. That's the only reason you can't fulfill it. Because of that type. That's why verse 26 can't be fulfilled by you. An ish, amen. She lies in wait like a robber to increase the traitors among mankind. Adar. You know what happens when you're a traitor? You become like Judas. And you know what happens when you become like Judas? You're going to be put inside that silver. You're not going to do it. And you're not going to move AL out of your tent. You're just going to hang yourself. Just like Haman. Verse 29. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaining? Children of Yahusha. Yahuwah is Isha. Who has strife? Children of Yahusha in the wilderness. Who has sorrow? The rock that Ashar hit, that cried out in the tears. Who has woe? Lead thy people. I'm going to visit their iniquity and their sin. You still got, that's the thing about a manager, you still got to lead though. Even with all that stuff going on, sorrow, you crying, strife, complaining. Whoa. Who has wounds without a cause? Handle me and see. Look at my right hand. Look at the nail prints in my hand and pierced in my side. Who was that? Who has redness of eyes? Who has redness of eyes? He said, eyes. He said, I ain't Ish Lapid. His eyes like flaming torches. Those who tarry long over wine, those who go to try mixed wine. Those are the people that's going to happen to. Do not look at wine when it is red. Don't even look at it. When it sparkles in a cup and goes down smoothly. Why? Why is he telling you don't look at? Why is he telling you not to look at wine? Why? Because when you start looking at, for a prostitute a deep pit, an adulteress is a narrow well. She lies in wait like a robber and increases the traitors of mankind. That's why he tell you don't look at no wine. Because the book of Sirach chapter 9 says don't drink wine with a woman that's married. Unless you drink it and then you incline your ear and you fall into destruction. So he said when that happened, he said don't even look at wine when it's red. Just like Yusuf didn't do. And when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smoothly, why do you think Yahusha ain't drink the wine when they first gave it to him, the sour wine when they first gave it to him? That's the reason why he gave him a reed and gave it to him to drink. That's why they ain't drink it. That's why the women, the people at the bottom, that's why he calls them adulterous women, Yahusha and Yehuda, according to Yahweh. But this is the reason why. Verse 32. In the end, it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. Man, it's just like in the Nakash in the garden. It's bitter. It's so bitter. Man, the waters were made bitter. I know. In the end, it bites like a serpent. Man, it'll bite you. And it stings like an adder. That's what that adulterous prostitute woman will do. That won't allow you, your son. He said, my son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways. That's what's going to happen to you. In the end, it bites like a serpent. It stings like an adder. He said, you ever been bit by a snake before, a reptilian? It do. Your eyes will see strange things. He said, when you start drinking that wine, you're going to be seeing strange stuff. He's like, man, thou shalt not commit adultery. Well, thou shalt not commit adultery doesn't really... Drinking more wine. Man, that commandment, man, forget that joke. Right? Now, you know what happens after that? You drink it one more time, it's over. Your eyes will see strange things and your heart will utter perverse things. You're going to be saying all types of stuff out of your mouth. You will be like one who lies down in the midst of the sea. You know how it says, you're going to be tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and women, by evil craftiness and cunning like the serpent. They're going to bite you like a serpent. Like one who lies on the top of a mast. They struck me, you will say, but I was not hurt. They beat me, but I did not feel it. When shall I awake? I must have another drink. You know how it is. You ain't gonna feel none of the blows that happened that night. Somebody beat you or left you on the side. You gonna wake up from your thing. You know you got beat up, and then you gonna be like, when can I have another drink? But that goes even deeper than that, right? This is Aleph Kaf, 1 Peter, Aleph Kaf 3 and 7. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey to the bar, right? 'Cause some husbands don't obey to the bar, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. What do you mean without a word? He said conduct. What do you mean conduct? When they see your respectful and pure conduct, that's the type of conduct you need to have. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair, the putting on of gold and jewelry, and the clothing you wear. Right? These are all just outward showings, right, that one can have, but then on the inside, just nothing. Right? Because remember, when they came with the gold, when they brought back the spoil from Bashan, who would calculate all the spoil and the gold? Right? They were. They did that. See, the Ashar were counting the gold and the silver, right? But it's just showing you, don't let it be the outward stuff that you do. You know, the stuff that people wear. Because you can still have the outward showing of something, but then you don't do nothing, right? Verse 4, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with an imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet ruach. Why? Because gentle and quiet, all gentleness and all, he said, quiet ruach, which in Yahuwah's sight is very precious. It pleases Yahuwah. For this is how the Kudash women who hoped in Yahuwah used to adorn themselves by submitting to their own husbands. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him master, Adani, and you are her children. So, wives, love your husband and your children. So you come out from her, which means that she is an example. And you are her children if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. Because you got to do it in an understanding way. You have to know likes, dislikes. You have to know things that set people off. You got to understand it on multiple levels. You got to be able to bring things in. You got to be able to watch with the continual bar. You have to be able to provide the food and the things that they need, food and water and all these things, and the necessities of life. And then you have to do this, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel. You got to show honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you. They are. Of the Khan of life. That's what it is. So that your prayers may not be hindered. What happened to Michelle? when they were complaining, mumbling, grumbling, he said, Yahuwah upset with me because of you. And you know what else he did? Yahuwah said, I don't want to hear nothing you got to say in this matter. Because of what? Even though he was praying too. But it would hinder because of that one thing he didn't do. And he got upset. And he got harsh. And he started saying, you rebels. Then he hit the rock. He got upset. And Yahuwah said, you're not going over. You're not going over to me. Because Yahuwah upset with me because of you. And he says, why? Because people say all the things that people say out of their mouth. And he says that your prayers may be not hindered. Right? So that's right. So that word for understanding weight, actually that word for honor is time. Or timeh. Showing honor, that word for honor is timeh. It's interesting. It means a value of money paid. Right? That's why they went to, when they got the spoil, who's counting the spoil when he brought it back from Bashan? He gave it to her, and she was counting that thing. Gold and silver and all types of stuff. Valuables. Didn't they bring back the valuables? Then she would count it. The woman was doing that. The highest degree, dignified, dignity itself. Why? Because he said the wives and the children of livestock stay here. When they went to fight, when they went to go and take down the Og in Bashan, because Yahuwah gave him his hand, they took all the spoil and the strong bulls of Bashan. But then they brought that stuff back home, and the value of the money paid, right? Because you got to pay the bride's price. People say, yeah, you got to pay. Like, none of this stuff free. I know people say honor. You got to pay the bride's price. You have to. Valuables, right? It means honor, precious price, right? But that word for hindered is ekopto. It means your prayers may not be frustrated, to be cut down. You know, you can bring up many prayers and you can stack a tree up and make it grow, water it with tears and all these things, and they keep going up. You water it with more tears, please, 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 and then they cut it back down. Because you got to understand that people are going to mumble, grumble, complain. People are going to say things. Things may not go your way. You're going to be tested on multiple levels as a manager. You're going to have to go through things, and you have to understand it in an understanding way. These things may transpire. And you cannot react in a way that can get your prayers hindered. You got to always do what Yahuwah says. And if you don't, then your prayers going to be hindered. And you're going to be what? Hewn down, right? You know, like Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was exalted. He said, man, this, he said, you're going to eat the dew of the ground. You're going to grow eagle's feathers and claws. Right? Not even knowing that was for his humility, his humiliation. But eventually, after the 7 periods, he rose up and Yahuwah restored him back everything that he had before, but he baraked Yahuwah's name. You know? But it also means to cut off. You know how it says cut off from among your people? He said, if you don't do this, you're going to be cut off from among your people. Exactly. If you don't keep these cogs and these muas, you don't do exactly what I say. If you don't do it exactly according to how it says it's written, if people are alive or not, you know, people say, oh, communication, everything. He said, you better do it. And if not, I'm trying to tell you, like people say, man, you can't even move. You know how you got you, but you better do it. Right, this not a game. Like people be thinking like, yeah, you know, I don't want to, okay. That your prayers be not hindered. Cut off. Yahuwah don't even hear what you're saying. People say, Yahuwah be hearing me. He don't. We be thinking that. And that's the part of a managerial role and understanding what a manager is, because you're going to have people mumbling, grumbling, complaining. You're going to have people rise up. You're going to have things happen. You're going to have battles. You got to fight giants. You're going to have to listen to Yahuwah, say, should I fight it? No. Should I go? No. Right? You got to know when to stand still, see the salvation of Yahuwah. You got to understand all of this stuff. If you don't understand it, then you're going to mess up. Then your prayer's going to be hindered. And you'll be like, then people in your household going to start saying things they shouldn't say, and you'll be like, I'm upset with them. I'm upset with you because of them. And then you have to make sure they understand by the continual washing of the bar what not to do. And then by doing that, you present it an offering made by fire. You can present a body, a Ashar without spot or wrinkle, a household without spot or wrinkle. And that's the whole point. This is 2 Samuel, Al-Shemwal 23, 1-7. Now these are the last words of Dawid, the oracle of David, the son of Yeshai, the oracle of the man who was raised on high. That's Yahusha was. But that's what he said, strong bulls of Bashan surrounded me, right? But he desired the mountain of Bashan, his dwelling place. He was raised on high. And the anointed of Elohim of Yaakov, the sweet psalmist of Yahusha. That's why when the woman anointed him with the alabaster box before he was dead, he said, he did it for my burial. These are the last words of Dawid. Because Yahusha was David. He was Dawid. That's why he said, this man's sepulchre, he's dead. But this man didn't see corruption. The Ruach of Yahuwah speaks by me, and his word is on my tongue. The Elohim of Yahusha has spoken. The Rock of Yahusha has said to me, when one rules justly over men, women, and children, ruling in the fear of Elohim, that your prayers don't be hindered. He dawns on them like the morning light, because it's like a bridegroom leaving his chamber. Just like Psalms 19 says, like the sun shining forth on a cloudless morning. Man, you just like a sun coming out of the portal. Like the rain that makes grass sprout from the earth. You're just like a rain shower as rain and snow come down from Shamayim, because the husbands have to wash their households and their wives, a continual washing of what? The word, the Jabbar. And you know what happens after that? For does not my house stand so with Elohim? For as for me and my house, we're going to serve Yahuwah. For he has made with me an everlasting berith, ordered in all things and secure. For will he not cause to prosper all my help and my desire? That's what happens. Why do you think they will prosper? Yahuwah does that. Man don't do nothing. Yahuwah does it. That's why when you keep Yahuwah and Mashiach, Yahusha in front of you, then guess what? They the one doing everything. They do all the work. You know how Kaf said, I ain't do nothing. Yahuwah does the work. I ain't do nothing. Who you think does all the things that you do? But worthless men are like thorns that are thrown away, for they cannot be taken with the hand. Why do you think, man, people have no idea. That's why he got rid of. Why do you think Ashar, when he disobeyed, he said, you're not going to see it. You can see a little bit, but you ain't going to see it. I'm not saying he was worthless, but I'm just showing you that. But the man who touches them arms himself with iron and a shaft and a spear, and he shall be utterly consumed with fire. Right, so that word for shining is a rock. It means to rise, to come forward. He said he just like the sun rising, that comes forward, to break out and rise up, shine, to come out, appear, to irradiate. Right, just like the sun, to appear, to rise, to broke up, to be dawned, to rise, to shine, because it's all a part of it. Or if you still sleep. Right, this is the book of Sirach, 26, skip 26:1. Barak is the man who has a virtuous wife, for the number of his days shall be double. You know what his father said about Hukmah, wisdom? He said, man, he said, man, gonna add many days to your life. A virtuous woman rejoices her husband, and he shall fulfill his years in shalom, in peace. Why? Because that woman removes Eyul out of her hall, and she does it continually. Even in the first month, through the eighth day, all the way to the 16th day, all throughout the whole year. Because she done made peace with Yahuwah. He said, why submit yourselves to your husband as to Yahuwah? So if you submit to Yahuwah, then you made peace with him, and you removed Eyul out of your tent, and now you offer your prayer to him, and he will hear you. But he ain't hear Mashado. Because he did them things wrong, right? A good wife is a good portion which shall be given to in the portion of them that fear Yahuwah, right? Because he said, my house is ordered in the fear of Yahuwah. And to each fear Yahuwah, he gonna do the things proper and wash him with the continual washing of the bar, that he may have a good Ishak. And you don't have no good Ishak if you don't got no bar in your mouth. I assure you that. You ain't gonna have no good children. What kind of children you gonna have if you ain't got no bar in your tongue? Whether a man be rich or poor. So this is why you need to know it. People say, why? Because a lot of people want to be rich. You might be poor. You might get tested. Poor mean they're going to be complaining, mumbling, grumbling. I'm hungry. All these things going to happen. So you got to be what? Tested. If he have a good heart toward Yahuwah, he shall at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance. Everything going to be all right. We're going to be great. Yahuwah is going to take care of us. Right? Yahuwah is a provider. He's always has been. And he always will be. For he is a loving Elohim. Right? He forgives sins, transgressions, and iniquities. But he don't clear the guilty. But he always leave a way to escape. There be three things my heart fears. And the fourth, I was so afraid. He said, man, I'm scared. The slander of a city, the gathering together of an unruly multitude. Hey, why do you think Mashah was terrified? You should be terrified. An unruly multitude of people, your whole household. That's gonna be too much. You know what happens when you get an unruly multitude? You get slandered. That's saying things, trying to ruin your reputation amongst a bunch of people. It ain't true. That's hard. Then you got a gathering of unruly multitude, everybody teaming up to take you down. Then you get falsely accused. Then he said, all these are worse than death. But then what did Yahusha say? Barak are you when men revile you, and say all many things evil against you. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in your shamayim. For so they did to the Nabi'im before you. You always got to have a cheerful countenance. Regardless. It's hard to way of life. A few that be will do that. Verse 6 says, but a grief of heart and sorrow is a woman that is jealous of another woman, and a scourge of a tongue, which communicates with all. But she going to let everybody know she's jealous of that woman too. That's why it says you need to remove your speech out of your tent. You know, that tent, the Eyul. An evil wife is a yoke shaken to and fro. He that have hold of her is as though he held a scorpion. Man, it sting like a serpent. It sting like an adder. Right? You hold that woman, you embrace that woman, right? Because that's what that is. That's what honor is, an embrace. You're going to get stung. If they reject you, it's going to be hatred. A drunken woman and a gatherer abroad causes great anger. That's what happens when you get drunk. That's why he told all the women, don't be slaves to wine. That's why he told us that. Because you gather abroad, right? Especially the older women doing it. And guess what? Everybody going to follow you. They're going to follow your steps. Who was a drunk and was sin found in her mouth, right? He ain't going to be following Yahusha Mashiach. He going to be following you. Right, because you're supposed to be a raiser of what? A generation, right? That's what the Ashar supposed to be, right? You're supposed to be a raiser of another generation, but how are you going to do that? A drunken woman and a gatherer abroad causes great anger, and she will not cover her shame. You know why? her own shame. The whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids. He said, look in the face, right? In the eyelids. Why? Because they hard as a rock. If the daughter be shameless, keep her in straitly, lest she abuse herself through overmuch liberty. Watch over an impudent eye. They say a disrespectful eye, and marvel not if she trespass against thee. A disrespectful woman. You say, marvel not. She will open her mouth. That's why we talk about your vestibule. You got to be up before the 8th day. He said, man, by the 8th day, man, he brought him before the vestibule, before the porch, before the Iyul. But by the time the 8th day of the first month, man, you need to have that stuff out of there now. You're going to be right at the porch. Right? You right there. Right at the door. Because, Pesach is right at the door after 8 days. It's like, man, not too far away. It says, right, it says, she will open her mouth as a thirsty traveler when he have found a fountain and drinketh every water near her. She drink everything, even the bitter water. If that each don't get that branch in that water, because you be hearing things, you be like, man, I gotta say something. I gotta put the branch in the water. Like I be watching television, I be hearing people say stuff. I immediately jump out, put the branch in the water, because I got to. Because if you don't put the branch in the water, you know what happens? That stuff bitter, man. You gotta put that water. You gotta put that big old log in the water. They go Yahusha Mashiach, because they be trying. People have no idea. They be doing stuff on everywhere, billboards. It don't matter, songs, music. You gotta put that log in there. You put that log in the water. Put that log in the song. You better put Yahusha Mashiach, make the water sweet. It's gonna happen. Something gonna happen, right? It's true. By every hedge, we see. By every hedge will she sit down, and over her quiver against every arrow, right? She gonna sit there, and anybody who say something, she gonna come at you now, right? They gonna bite you. Going to verse 16, skipping over. As the sun, when it arises in the Shamayim, so is the beauty of a good wife in the ordering of her house. That's what I want. Just like we read in the last words of Dawood. So you just like the sun. The sun and the moon are the same size according to Enoch, first Enoch. But the sun shines 7 times brighter than the moon. But it says, as the sun, when it arises in the high Shamayim, so is the beauty of a good wife in the ordering of her house. As the clear light is upon the Kudash candlestick, so is the beauty of the face in ripe age. As the golden pillar are upon the sockets of silver, so are the fair feet with a constant heart. That's the whole point of that. Right? This is Talim, Psalms 122. Psalms 122, 3-9. Jerusalem, built as a city that is bound firmly together, to which the tribes go up, the tribes of Yahuwah, as was decreed for Yasharah, 12 tribes, to give thanks to the name of Yahuwah. Their thrones for judgment were set, the thrones of the house of Dawid. Pray for shalom for Jerusalem. So how you gonna do that if your prayers in? How you gonna do that? If your prayer is hindered and you disobeying Yahuwah, how you gonna do that? May they be secure who love you. How you gonna do that? You can't say Shalamu, Shalom, Yerushalayim, Shalamu, Habayit. You can't say that. How you gonna do that when your prayer is hindered? Shalom be within your walls and security within your towers. How you gonna get shalom in your house when your prayer is hindered? For my brothers and companions' sake, I will say shalom within you. How you gonna get shalom within in your heart and your mind when your prayers are hindered, and when you ain't doing what Yahuwah says? That's why he says there ain't no shalom to the wicked. He said, ain't no way. Your prayers hindered. Yahuwah is angry with me because of you, or vice versa. Because you ain't do what I said. You ain't going. You going to see the land. Then they mumbling, grumbling, complaining. Everybody in the household acting crazy. So therefore, I got to tell you what to do. And if you don't do it, then your prayers hindered, and you're not going to get any peace on the inside. And in your household, and people going to walk, your house is such a shalom. No, your house ain't shalom. For the sake of the house of Yahuwah, our Elohim, I will seek your good, right? And people, this is all a part of it, right? This Nazarene action of Shalakim, good news gives power over demons. You know what happens when you get those. You see how it's important in the knowledge of Yahuwah and the observance of divine obedience, right? That's what happened to Ashar. His prayers got hindered. Which not only protects those who believe from the assaults of demons, you won't be quarreling, fighting, mumbling, grumbling, complaining, and you definitely won't get Yahuwah upset. And you won't be quarreling. Because those are assaults of demons. That's all they are. They ain't got nothing to do with nothing else. Why do you think Mashah hit the rock and he spoke it and it cried out, and the thing cried out tears, and they started pouring out water without fail? It kept going. Why do you think they pierced Yahusha in the side, out came blood and water? Think about it, you hit somebody real hard. You're gonna have tears, people will be crying, there's gonna be blood at the same time. Why do you think they hit the stone? When he hit the stone. But also gives them command over others who rule over others, right? That's what happens. Therefore, it is necessary for you who are the Goyim nations to betake yourself to Yahuwah and to keep yourself from all uncleanness, that the demons may be expelled and Yahuwah may dwell in you. And at the same time, by prayers, commit yourselves to Yahuwah and call for his aid against the impudent demons. For whatsoever you ask, believing, you will receive. How you gonna do that when your prayers hindered? But even the demons themselves, in proportion as they see Amunah grow in man, in that proportion they depart from him, right? And all this is a part of it, right? All that's a part of it. And then it says right here, residing only in the part in which something of infidelity still remains. So look at the portions. Look at the things that's inside of a human being, and he says, grow. How are things going to grow inside of an Ishar? Because inside of an Ishar has to be what? The water. By continual washing under the bar. But for those who believe with full Amunah, they depart without any delay. When a Ruach has come to Amunah of Yahuwah, it obtains the virtue of the heavenly water, which extinguishes the demon like a spark of fire, that you may be subject to your husband. Why? Submit yourselves to your husband to do what? That he may be what? Washed by continual washing under the bar, that you may extinguish the demons like a spark of fire. And that's the whole point of it. Right? This is Dead Sea Scrolls 4Q 257. These are the paths in the world to enlighten the heart of man. Straighten out in front of him all the paths of true justice, establishing his heart respect for the precepts of Elohim and the Ruach of meekness, of patience and generous compassion, of eternal goodness, intelligence, understanding, potent wisdom with trust in all the deeds of Elohim, and depends on his abundant mercy. A Ruach of knowledge in all the plans of action, of enthusiasm for the decrees of justice, and set apart plans with firm purpose and generous compassion with all the sons of truth, of magnificent purity which detests all unclean idols, of careful behavior and wisdom concerning everything. So that includes everything that you do on a day-to-day basis. And that's in everything. That's why it says, wives, submit yourselves to your husbands in everything. Just as the congregation is subject to Yahusha Mashiach, so the wives submit themselves to their husbands in everything. And that's wisdom. That's what we read that his father told his son. And guess what it says? Of concealment concerning the truth of the mysteries of the knowledge. These are the foundations of the Ruachs, of the sons of truth in the world. And the reward of those who walk in it will be healing. plentiful peace and long life. That's what happens when you get a virtuous wife. Fruitful offspring with an everlasting barak, eternal enjoyment in this life, a crown of kabod and majestic raiment in eternal life. However, the ruach of deceit belongs greed, because there was no deceit in Yahusha Mashiach's mouth. Sluggish in the service of justice, wickedness, falsehood, pride, haughtiness of heart, dishonesty, trickery, cruelty, much insecurity, impatience, much foolishness. Impatience. We come out here to die. We have no water. We have no food. We have plenty. But guess what? Impatience, much foolishness, impudent enthusiasm for appalling acts performed in a lustful passion, 50 paths in the service of impurity, blasphemous tongue, blindness of eyes, hardness of hearing, stiffness of neck, hardness of heart, in order to walk in the paths of darkness and evil cunning. Because you know what happens when you do that? You know what happens when you do that? That becomes like another notch in your belt when your prayers get hindered. Right? And the visitation of those who walk in it with abundance of afflictions of the monarchy of destruction for eternal damnation by the scorching wrath of Elohim of revenges, of permanent terror and shame without end, with humiliation and destruction by the fire of the dark regions. In all the ages of their generations, they shall spend in bitter weeping and harsh evils in the abyss of the darkness of destruction, without there being a remnant or survivor for them. Who was the people that didn't have a remnant or survivor? They killed everybody, men, women, and children. The descendants of Og and the Rephaim, they went and destroyed men, women, and children. There was no remnant or survivor for them. And he said, strong bulls of Bashan had surrounded me. And he desired the mountains of Bashan as his habitation, all the way to Mount Hermon. But these are all a part of his judgments on people and on the world, right? Because you don't want to be like a giant. You want to be like a Rephaim. Right, this is Nazarene Ashar Shalakim, how demons get power over men. Therefore, demons, as we have just said, when once they have been able, by means of opportunities, afforded them to convey themselves through base and evil actions in the bodies of men, women, and children. If they remain in them a long time through their own negligence, whose job is that? They each got to get that stuff out. Why? Because if you don't, you got to continue washing by the bar. As long as you keep doing that, no negligence going on here. You will always see what's going on. Right? Okay, I know what's going on there. I know what's going on there. The bar everywhere. Right? Right? Because they do not seek after what is profitable for their inner beings. Right? The Kahan is supposed to keep knowledge, and the people will seek the word at his mouth. That's why Yahusha Mashiach was sitting there, and the woman was sitting down at his feet. She said, you desire the thing that won't be taken away from you. They necessarily compel them in the future to fulfill the desires of the demons that dwell in them. That's what happens when all these things start to transpire. But what is worse at the end of the age, when the demons be co-signed to ageless fire, the necessity of the Ruach also that obeyed him, because these are male spirits, right? These type of spirits, but will with him be tortured in ageless fires together with his body that it has polluted. That's what it does. It pollutes the body. This is Azreen National Shalakim, suggestions of the old serpent. Above all, therefore, you ought to, above all, right? So we talk about all. Therefore, you ought to understand the deception of the old serpent, the Nakash, Shaitan, the dragon, the devil, and his cunning suggestions who deceives you as it were by prudence, as by sorts of reasons creeps through your senses, deceiving you a great gain, because he don't want you to do that. He don't want you to please Yahuwah with your household. Therefore, he enunciates in your minds opinions of Elohim of whatever kinds, only that your sin is his comfort. That's the only way he stay around. That's why the continual washing under the bar, just like the congregation is subject to Mashiach Yahusha, so the wives be subject to their husbands and everything. So his sin can't be his comfort. He can stay around. For his immorality was condemned from the beginning to eat dust. For that he caused to be again resolved into the dust him who was taken from the dust. That's Adam, right? That's why the bitter water that he brought in there, and they drunk it. It says, even to the time when your beings will be restored. Going over. It says, from him therefore proceeds all errors and doubts. That's what happens. He started to get you to doubt the order of Yahuwah. He started to get you to doubt your household, not love your children, not love your wife, Not love your wives and the sheen, your household, your men servant, your maid servant, your ox, your donkey, anything inside of your home, your household, in your gates. And guess what? By which you are driven from Amunah, which you lost Yahuwah's voice, now your prayers hindered. And belief in one Elohim Yahuwah. Now your prayers hindered, and now Yahuwah ain't listening to nothing you saying. Because you allowed him give you errors and doubts. And you got like Ashar. Are you a bunch of rebels? And you start getting harsh. And you start doing opposite Yahuwah says. You get angry and wrathful. That's why he tells us to put away anger and wrath. Right? What happens? You end up doing opposite what Yahuwah says. And then you get plagued. Then you find yourself not accomplishing the things you wanted to. And you be like, man, what happened? Yahuwah angry with me. Because I didn't do what he said. And then he said he angry with me because of you. So he said, and it always comes like that. That's why Yahusha said the reproach of those that reproach you, Yahuwah, it fell on me. That's why he put it all on Ashar. That's what happens. He put it all on him. That's what happened to him. This is 2nd Baruch 74, pseudepigrapha, 1-4. And it will happen in those days that the reapers will not become tired, and the farmers will not wear themselves out. He said it's not going to happen because the products of themselves will shoot out speedily. Why? Because of the bar. As the rain and snow come down from Shamayim, so that the bar be that goes out of my mouth. It's going to spring up. Right? A man ruling over his household is like a sun rising on a cloudless day. During the time that they work on them in full, he says, during the time that they work on them in full tranquility. That's why you need to fulfill this in peace, in shalom. You need to be at peace, in tranquility, in order for these things to happen. That's why your household needs to be at peace. That's why you need to have shalom on the inside. That's why you need to have peace in everywhere you go. Shalom. Why? Because then tranquility allows these things to sprout up and allows these things to grow. For that time in the end of that which is corruptible and the beginning of that which is incorruptible. Why? Because this mortal must put on immortality. This corruption must put on incorruption. Therefore, the things which were said before will happen in it. Therefore, it is far away from the evil things and near to those who do not die. Those he said, those are the last bright waters which have come after the last dark waters. You know what happens when the waters get murky and dark? That means it has continually flowed to what? Till the last bit of dark water is gone. And once that last bit of dark water is gone, then this water starts to come out clear. And when it comes out clearer, then that's wisdom. Wisdom from above is first peaceable, gentle, open to reason. Right? It ain't murky, right? It ain't got no other type of additives, no bitterness, no hatred, no jealousy, no envy in it. And then it flows and it's clear, right? And what it does, this is Yeshayahu, these are the last bright waters, right? Yeshayahu, chapter 2, verse 1. Yeshayahu, chapter 2, verse 1. The word that Yeshayahu, the son of Amul, saw concerning Yehuda in Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yahuwah shall be established in the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. He's like, man, I desire to. He said, well, in one part, he said, I desire Bashan as my dwelling place. The mountains are all the way to the top of Mount Hermon. He said, but all nations shall flow to this high mountain, the highest of the mountain. Right? That word for flow is Nahar. That word for all nations shall flow. That word for flow is Nahar. It means to shine, to beam, a light burn. It means to be cheerful, right? To be cheerful. It means a sheen of a running stream. A shine, to flow, to assemble. Because these are the last bright waters that I saw. Right, because it's no longer, when the last bit of dark, murky water came, then these are the last bright waters that I saw. Right, because that's the whole point, right? So you look at that water sheen, right? The sheen on the water. He said, you're going to be these are the bright waters that I saw. Right, look at the sheen on the water. That's in the Nahar. He said they're going to shine just like that. He said, it's all going to be where the people will not die. Where the incorruption has put on, corruption has put on incorruption. These are the last bright waters that I saw. It's like a water sheen on top of the water. He said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst. When the sun meets the water, he said, there am I in the midst right there. All that immersion Yahusha had put him on. He said, you like the sheen on the top of the water. That's you. Right? This is 2 Baruch 75, Pseudepigrapha, volume 1, 1 through 8. And I answered and said, who can equal your goodness, Yahuwah? Or who can fathom your Khan? Who can do that? Or who can understand your intelligence? Who can do that? Or who can narrate the thoughts of your Ruach? Who can do that? Or who of those born can hope to arrive at these things? Who? Apart from those to whom you are merciful and gracious, right? Because you depend on his abundant mercy. Guess what? For if you were not merciful to men and women, those who are under your right hand, your yard, they were not able to come to them. He said, who gonna reveal that stuff to you? You say, who gave you the water? Who gave you the bread? Ashar didn't give you the water and the bread. I gave you the water and the bread. And guess what? Apart from those, it says, apart from those who are named among the famous number. But we exist when we know why we have come, and then subject ourselves to him who brought us out of Mizraim, Egypt. We shall come again and remember those things which have passed away, and rejoice with regard to the things which we have been. But if we do not know now why we have come, and do not recognize the sovereignty of him who brought us up from Mizraim, we will come again and ask for that which has now occurred. You're going to do it again and again, because you keep thinking that it was somebody else. It was Yahuwah himself. And shall be severely grieved because of that which has happened again. But you need to realize who brought you out of Mizraim. Right? And that's the whole point of it, right? So this is a 12-month Lamed staff. It means expert, direction, instruction. That's all it is. Teach, protection, because that's what it's going to protect you from the assaults of demons. Right? And reframe, comfort, go, teach, discipline, yoke, authority, bind. That's all a part of it. Right? The Lamed staff, right? This is Aleph Yuchanan 2, 24 to 23. Let what you've heard from the beginning abide in you. Why? Because he made Adam in his own image and he formed a Ashar from his Selah. He formed a Selah from his side, right? If what you heard from the beginning abides in you, then you too will abide in the Son, the life of the house, and the Father, the strength of the house. And this is the promise he has made to us, eternal life. I write these things about those who are trying to deceive you. Why? Because he's saying as the body is subject to Yahusha Mashiach, so the wives be their husbands and everything. And wives, love your children and love your husband. Why? Because if you don't, then ain't nothing going to please Yahuwah. Absolutely nothing. I mean, you can walk around and think that you're pleasing Yahuwah you want, but just understand you're not. But it says, but the anointing you receive from him abides in you, and you have no need that anyone should teach you. Why? But as his anointing teaches you about everything, and it's true, and it's no lie, just as it has taught you, abide in him. And now, little children, you got to obey your parents. Children, obey your parents. Abide in him so that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming. If you know that he is righteous, you may be sure that everyone who practices righteousness has been born of him. You say you should be sure about that. Right? This is Sirach 3, 17 through 23. My son and daughter, go on thy business in Anu, and in meekness. So shalt thou be beloved of him that is approved. The greater thou art, the more humble thyself, and thou shalt find favor before Yahuwah. Many are in high places of renown, but mysteries are revealed unto the Anu. They revealed unto the meek. Seek not out things that are too hard for thee. right? Neither search for things that are above thy strength. He said, don't even search for it. But what is commanded thee, think thereupon with reverence. That's all you got to do. For it is not needful for thee to see with thine eyes the things that are in secret. Be not curious in unnecessary matters, for more things are showed unto thee than men and women and children understand. But how you come to know it? He said, Yahuwah must be gracious and merciful to you in order for you to even understand this. Who can understand the knowledge of Yahuwah and his intelligence? I assure you, this is absolutely nothing, right? People say this is like a speck of his knowledge. This ain't nothing. But at the same time, for his children, a little piece of food is like a full belly, right? Of food. Because he had to fill your stomach. Just even as they came out of Mizraim, they had to what? They were thinking about what they used to have. But in order for him to get you out of that mindset, he had, I got to do something greater than Mizraim. Because Mizraim was doing all that sorcery, witchcraft, all them things they probably made their food out of thin air, right? Did some crazy stuff. Fill you up with some preservatives and make your stomach swell up. But he said, I'm gonna send my son Yahusha, and he gonna give you bread and water that you'll never hunger or thirst again. It's gonna be greater than their bread and their water. And that's the truth, right? And these are all a part of it. So look at all that. We look at Yahusha Mashiach. Look at the light of life. Look at the true light that lighteth every man, woman, and child that hears his debar, that's continually washed by his debar. That we should no longer walk according to our own imaginations, but according to in subjection to Yahuwah Elohim under his yod, his right hand. For his right hand is very powerful. And even as his right hand covers when things happen, yet his right hand also tests. His right hand also delivers, and his right hand also executes judgment. And he hears all the words that we say. He said, Yahuwah is in the Shamayim, and you are on the earth. Therefore, let your words be few. So, my son and daughter, go on thy business that ain't new. So shalt thou be beloved of him that is approved. The greater thou art, the more humble thyself. And thou shalt find favor before Yahuwah. Many are in high places of renown, but mysteries are revealed to the meek, the new. For the meek shall inherit the earth. The meek, new, shall inherit the Adars.